Well, hello there, and welcome back. This is the podcast that must not be named, which you probably knew, unless you stumbled upon us by accident, in which case, welcome. I'm Melissa.
I am Luke.
And we are here discussing Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, chapter number 3, The Invitation. This chapter was 13 pages long, which is 1.77% of the book.
Harry heads downstairs for breakfast with the Dursleys. He gets served a small quarter of grapefruit because Dudley has to be on a diet due to the fact that he's coming very close to becoming a perfect sphere, and the whole family has to join him with the new eating habits. Harry was accepting of these changes as he put out the owl call to his friends, and they responded with cakes and treats that tied him over. The doorbell rang, and Vernon answers only to be given a letter covered in stamps. It's so interesting that the mail carrier needed to know who it was from. The letter was from Mrs. Weasley asking to have Harry join them for the rest of the summer and to attend the Quidditch World Cup. After a brief debate, Harry wants to either a yes or no answer so he can finish his letter to his godfather, the convicted criminal, just to let him know where he'll be. Vernon gives in and allows him to go with the Weasleys. Harry then returns to his room to find a letter from Ron attached to a small owl asking him the same question his mother had asked. Harry lets him know the Muggles had said yes and he'll be waiting for them tomorrow. He also finishes his letter to Sirius letting him know about the trip as well. Harry pulled back a loose floorboard in his room and enjoyed a piece of cake, and Dudley had none.
Character introductions. We had
was one.
We had one.
One.
It was
sort of.
A small, tiny owl that was called Pig.
An owl named Pig.
Is that like a boy named Sue?
Or a dog named Turtle.
There you go. Is that a thing? I don't know that
It is
reference.
a thing. It's from a book called The Tales of the Fourth Grade Nothing.
Okay. All right.
It's a great book.
I'll have to check that one out. I don't know it.
Yeah. And I get the Boy Named Sue reference too. It's a great song.
That's a good song.
Yeah.
No new locations that I saw.
But at least Harry left his room.
He did leave his bedroom this time and ran up the stairs at one point.
Oh, true. We did have some magicabulary.
Yeah.
We got the Daily Mail, which may or may not be magicabulary as opposed to just, mail.
Well, so I thought that, but it was specifically italicized in there to be a proper noun. That was the only reason I included it. Because I thought it'd be like a real generic, the Daily Mail, clearly. But then it was italicized as a title. So I felt like it had to go.
Yes, dear. And then we had the Department of International Cooperation.
Yeah, Percy works there. Don't ask him about it. He's real excited about it.
Don't use the word abroad.
Yeah, it's hilarious. So
hey, guess what?
We have an illustration.
We do, and I remembered.
I know. You remembered this time.
I did. I'm doing better this book, only because I'm making a point of putting notes in.
There you go. Hey, we all have to have our methods.
That's right. And this illustration is an envelope with a lot of stamps.
Yes. It almost looks like there's a wax seal on the back, too.
Yeah, that's
where
cool.
it flips down. I like those. I like wax seals. How classy, right?
So if I pull your name for Christmas, wax seal.
Dude, if I could get an Imaginary Legion Laurel's wax seal, I would dig that. That would be awesome.
Okay. That's going to be a job for Abby.
I wonder if we can get T-Public to make those for us.
Anybody got an Etsy store?
Yeah, if you run an Etsy store and you make rubber stamps, get at us.
Yeah, we're interested. All right, but let's talk about the stamps. Yes, I'm very excited about the wax seal, but the stamps, there's a lot of people on there. They're interesting. They're all little, not all of them. Some are stars and little things, but there's a lot of faces, which I think is really interesting. And one of them says 75 cents. So how much money did they have to spend on the fact that each stamp is different too? It's not like they just bought a book of the same stamps.
Right. Yeah, no, I thought that too. Whenever we kind of went through reading through the chapter, I was like, man, that's not cheap. And I think we'll touch on it again later. I may or may not have a question about it, but
okay.
Yeah, no, that's not a cheap way of sending mail.
No, not at all. All right, hey Luke.
Hey Melissa, you have notes.
I do, but you get to go first.
Okay.
So tell me what you know.
So we get some of Dudley's end of school reports.
Ooh, those were fun.
Yeah. So he's being accused of bullying at school, and I have a hard time believing that. Yeah, no, it's yeah, he's a bully.
Yeah, truth.
Yeah, and clearly, the weight issue is a big thing. He's not doing all that well at school, is what we learn. And his parents are
poor.
His parents are just not believing a single word of it, aside from maybe the diet, but not even really believing it. They're just taking action.
And here's the thing. There is a line, and I didn't pick it as my favorite line, but there is one that really shows how brilliant the school nurse is. Because Vernon and Petunia explain away everything.
Mm-hmm.
He wouldn't hurt a fly. They don't want some swatty little Nancy boy. Blah, 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 right? But the line is, however, at the bottom of the report, there were a few well-chosen comments from the school nurse that not even Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia could explain away. No matter how much Aunt Petunia wailed that Dudley was big-boned, and that his poundage was really puppy fat, and that he was a growing boy who needed plenty of food, the fact remained that the school outfitters didn't stock knickerbockers big enough for him anymore. I like that.
And even, right, the school nurse had seen what Aunt Petunia's eyes, so sharp when it came to spotting fingerprints on her gleaming walls and in observing the comings and goings of the neighbors, simply refused to see that far from needing nourishment, Dudley had reached roughly the size and weight of a young killer whale. Like, it's a little heavy-handed on JK for the fat shaming side, which has been there in all of the books, but not to play too much onto that, like, the fact that the nurse is able to see this, and the narrator just flat out calls out Petunia as refusing to see it. That's the part that I found most interesting there.
And you're right. The fat shaming thing is really upsetting. If he wasn't such a jerk. I mean, not that you wish that upon anyone, because you don't, but like, he's such a jerk. So one would wish that it's kind of nice to see him get his comeuppance in something, because he gets away with everything and has since we met him at the age of 1,
mm-hmm.
right? He always got his way. So it's nice to see him finally being held accountable for something. And the burns are kind of epic.
Go for it.
So we've got the killer whale. At one point, it says that Dudley looked furious and sulky and somehow seemed to be taking up even more space than usual. This was saying something, as he always took up an entire side of the square table by himself. Just really interesting ways of showing that, I mean, he must have put on so much extra weight.
It's clearly out of control. Like,
right.
And they are poisoning him more and more by, one, teaching him to do this and not realizing that it's an issue. It's
like, we've talked about this before. We talked about it way back in book 1 about how, yes, they blatantly abuse Harry, but the abuse they've given to Dudley too is incredibly damaging to him, mm-hmm. because he has no self-control and no sense of like really self-worth necessarily, or it becomes the bigger I am, the stronger I am, the more self-worth I have. And he's so defiant that he's going to go against anything anybody tells him to do simply because he can. He's mm-hmm. never had to follow a rule. And it sounds like that his grades are bad. His, eating is bad. His bullying is bad. He purposefully, I'm assuming, does what he wants because he's always been told he can. It's nice to see some limitations being put on him finally.
Yeah. It's teaching the parents as well, which is good. So with this, the diet gets put in place, right? And Harry quickly decides, that's not for me. And he like calls for aid from his friends, and they really, really rise to the occasion, right?
Yes, they do. I have a list. The sugar-free snacks from Hermione.
Which was a great touch.
Because her parents are dentists.
I loved that.
Me too.
It was just like an easy way to get that. That was actually one of like the exposition points where I was like, that's smooth. I like that.
That was very book 3.
Yeah, it was. It was, absolutely.
The homemade rock cakes from Hagrid, as a last resort.
Mm-hmm.
The fruit cake and assorted meat pies from Mrs. Weasley, along with, for his birthday, 4 different birthday cakes. One from Ron, one from Hermione, one from Hagrid, and one from Sirius.
This must be a really big, loose floorboard, right?
I want to know, how do the meat pies stay fresh?
Maybe he ate those first.
Maybe?
Is that like an empanada?
I'm just saying, I'm hoping they're purposefully packing things that have some
shelf life.
Yes, that's the word.
Some loose floorboard life.
Yes.
Reasonable. Very reasonable.
Yeah.
But it definitely seems like everyone's having a tough time, besides maybe Petunia and Harry, with this diet. So, my point being, Vernon is not a fan of this diet. Right?
Extra bonus.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it is really hard as a parent to follow through on consequences, which is why the Dursleys have never done that before, because, it's too hard and it's too hard to fight against them and whatever. But it's when you give consequences to children, you have to really own it and you have to buy into it 100%. So if you say you're not going to have TV for X number of days, then, oh dear God, you better have something for them to do.
Right.
If you say
uphold your punishment, but at the same time, know that you could be creating an issue for yourself.
And it's worth it most of the time, but there are always consequences for your actions. So yes, you're putting in consequences for your children, but the consequence for you then is how much work does that make for you? And
right. Is the punishment for you or for them?
Right. What repercussions does it have? Right. And in this case, Vernon is finding out that there are some major repercussions happening. Although that guy is going to work every day and just like binge eating, right? Like
he's at the food truck for sure.
Oh yeah.
Bringing in donuts for the office.
He's going for breakfast before he gets to work, eating for lunch, and stopping for a snack on the way home.
Right. So while he's not eating his small quarter of grapefruit, the doorbell rings and the mailman meets, we'll call him Durnan from now on. He meets Durnan at the front door. And
I was hoping you missed that.
Oh, I don't miss anything. And the mailman is laughing at this entire letter carrying situation. Melissa, tell us about this letter here.
So the letter, let me see if I can find the explanation. And it said, first of all, there was a letter, but Mrs. Dursley writes, "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Dursley, we have never been introduced, but I am sure you have heard a great deal from Harry about my son Ron. As Harry might have told you, the final of the Quidditch World Cup takes place this Monday night, and my husband, Arthur, has just managed to get prime tickets through his connections at the Department of Magical Games and Sports. I do hope you will allow us to take Harry to the match, as this really is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Britain hasn't hosted the Cup for 30 years, and tickets are extremely hard to come by. We would, of course, be glad to have Harry stay for the remainder of the summer holidays, and to see him safely onto the train back to school. It would be best for Harry to send us your answer as quickly as possible in the normal way, because the Muggle postman has never delivered to our house, and I am not even sure he knows where it is. Hoping to see Harry soon. Yours sincerely, Molly Weasley. P.S. I do hope we put enough stamps on." And it goes on. Uncle Vernon finished reading, put his hand back into his breast pocket, and drew out something else. "Look at this," he growled. He held up the envelope in which Mrs. Weasley's letter had come, and Harry had to fight down a laugh. Every bit of it was covered in stamps, except for a square inch on the front, into which Mrs. Weasley had squeezed the Dursleys' address in minute writing.
She did put enough stamps on then. Harry trying to sound as though Mrs. Weasley's was a mistake anyone could make. Harry's sass here. I love these chapters for this reason, because this is where we get all of the Harry Vernon interactions are gold. Like, yes. They're laced with abuse, right? I'm not for that. The independence and strength Harry has gained and learning how to deal with Vernon over the past 4 years specifically is awesome. And because clearly last book he blew up his aunt and was like, you know what, I'm gonna peace, I'm gonna bounce, see ya, and was giving him sass. He really worked him last book before Aunt Marge there to try to get the letter signed and everything to go to Hogsmeade, the permission form I should say, and he still is he knows how to pull and just dangle things in front of Vernon to get him to dance the way that he wants to. Like he knows where these limitations are now and knows when to just prod just a little bit more on certain things, which we see in this chapter here. And his sass after, when he's talking about the clothes and Vernon's like, don't you stand there and, act this way to me after I put clothes on your back. And Harry's like, only after Dudley's finished with him. I mean, yeah.
There are so many good moments that 3-page interaction. And I think it really comes down to Harry wasn't going to stand for it. Gone were the days where he had been forced to take every single. He wasn't following the diet. He was going to go to the World Cup if he could help it. And so then he had his magic words of, the Godfather. And
the broomstick. He has a couple little magic words in there.
Here, Quidditch, he muttered under his breath. Quidditch, what is this rubbish? Harry felt a second stab of annoyance. It's a sport, played on a broom. All right, said Uncle Vernon loudly. And I don't even think Harry is in that moment purposefully using the words of like playing on a broom and flying, all of that. But Vernon's, it's like a physical reaction he has to hearing about the Hogwarts Express and flying broomsticks and all those things. It's so funny to watch him go off the deep end with it. And his fundamental battle between, do I make Harry miserable or do I get him out of my hair? Right. That internal struggle is just amazing.
Yeah. So like the after the broomsticks one, which I think that one for Harry was kind of a natural slip up, right? That was like, he just was explaining what you cannot
I don't think that
describe.
was important.
He was answering his questions, but the next one he does on purpose because Vernon, questions the normal for us, what does she mean the normal way for post? And it says, normal for us, said Harry. And before his uncle could stop him, this is how you know it's very intentional. He added, Outpost. That's what's normal for wizards. And Vernon loses it again, but clearly just kind of teeter-tottering Vernon closer to this edge of not giving Vernon a chance to really have a say in this conversation. Like just pushing the right buttons just enough.
Oh yeah. Well manipulated.
Yeah.
Putting just the right amount of pressure over and over again. And then Vernon says yes.
Yeah.
Which is great. So Harry goes upstairs to write a note.
Yes.
But finds a letter.
Yeah, he gets hit with a baseball-sized owl, right?
A feathery tennis ball.
Tennis ball, yeah.
I think that's hysterical. And I think my favorite part of the letter is when Ron says, only Mom and Dad reckon it's better if we pretend to ask their permission first. If they say yes, send Pig back with your answer pronto, and we'll come and get you at 5 o'clock on Sunday. If they say no, send Pig back pronto, and we'll come and get you at 5 o'clock on Sunday anyway. Like, you're coming. We know you're coming. You know you're coming. We just want them to think that they had a say in it.
These are just an attempt at proper channels.
Right.
Yeah, very, very funny. Ron, it's all okay. The Muggles say I can come. See you at 5 o'clock tomorrow. Can't wait. Signed, Harry.
So my only other really big thought for this chapter is it's a very typical kid thing, because just a few short hours before, because it's still morning, a few short hours before, he was worried about his scar, worried about Voldemort, worried about that dream, just very kind of discombobulated. You distract him with some sports and some cake, and like all is right with the world.
Yeah, sounds about right.
It's very like compartmentalizing. Okay, like, well, scary thing, no big deal, because right now I get to sport. Now I get cake, and right now I get to go see my buddy. And there's, it's harkens back to our other podcasts, the podcast that floats down here, where we talk about how kids are so resilient and that they can see things that are unnatural and scary and just then move on with their lives. But adults need to rationalize them. This is a good example of a kid just sort of moving on from something scary because I got something cool coming and it's no big deal. It just all kind of rolls into their reality.
Yeah, it doesn't seep through into absolutely everything that they think about at that point. They, like you said, compartmentalize. I like it.
All right. Hey, Luke.
Hey, Melissa.
It's time for some burning questions.
All right, light them up. Let's go. Question 1. Of the 4 birthday cakes Harry receives, which do you think tasted the best?
This is not even a contest. It's Mrs. Weasley's.
You have to rank all 4 of them then.
Okay, Mrs. Weasley's is absolutely the best. Hagrid's is the worst, because God bless him, man can't cook. Not that men can't cook.
So really, we're just picking between Sirius and Hermione.
And so I'm torn.
To be fair, it does say that Ron sent him a birthday cake outside of what Mrs. Weasley sent him earlier.
It's still Mrs. Weasley. It's a Weasley cake.
Just clarifying there.
I know, but it's a Weasley cake. So it comes down to Sirius probably bought the cake.
Right.
And Hermione probably made the cake, and it's probably sugar-free, but it might be flavored with like applesauce and honey, and that actually ends up really good. So I like homemade things better than store-bought things. So I'm going to go with Hermione is second and Sirius is third, but they weren't that far off.
Okay. Comparable. You're not going to be put out by having either one of them.
Right. And none of them are going to match Mrs. Weasley's.
Sure.
Because Hermione probably has like an odd frosting, but then Sirius's is like a store-bought or the bakery frosting, and I don't like that kind of frosting. I'd much rather have homemade frosting. I'm very picky about my baked goods.
Yeah, overall, I definitely agree with you. I feel like the way Sirius seems to be spending money on tropical birds, on a firebolt, I feel like he's going to splurge and get a really, really good store-bought cake.
Especially if he knows that Harry doesn't have.
Right. That's where I'm coming with. I think with that quality level, Uppins could take second place.
It could. It absolutely could. I have no problem with that. That's where I was a little torn because you know it's going to be high quality.
Oh, yeah.
And you never know if a cake flavored with, like natural honey from who knows at this point because they're dentists, but it could be really good.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Question 2. Could the post office have found the Weasley's house? So it says in the letter, we don't know if the mailman could find our house, right?
Well, if they don't know if the mailman could find their house, then I would assume they don't have any kind of those magical enchantments like Hogwarts does to keep muggles away.
Right,
that would
nothing
be
specific, yeah.
Right. So one would assume that theoretically their house is visible to the muggle eye, which means you could find it. I don't think a postman would because there might not be a road there or something because they flue powder in and out.
Where we're living, we don't need roads because we're wizards and we apparate or flue powder everywhere.
And then we use our DeLoreans.
They did have a car, though, so they should have roads.
They did. Okay, so I would say it is possible, but not likely.
Okay.
Using my probability vocabulary.
Perfect.
How about you?
I feel like they could find it. I mean, they've had no reason to go there before, but I feel like they could manage if they. Well, one, how are the Dursleys going to respond without an address? So there's a whole bucket of badgers to sort out. But I think there could be a chance, especially with the wizard oversight in the post office, or other things that we've somewhat discussed previously that might not be a real thing, but we're speculating on.
Okay.
Question 3. How many stamps do you think Mrs. Weasley managed to fit on the envelope without counting them?
I'm not counting them.
Okay, I just saw you looking down at your book, and I was like, sorry. I'm
drawing a model on my graph paper.
Okay.
Because math teacher.
That is acceptable.
Okay, so the standard size envelope is like a 4 1/8 by a 9.5 inch envelope. One would assume that it was a standard size envelope. You could say it might have been like shorter and wider, like a
card size.
Like a card size, but I'm going to go with a 4 by 9 just to...
Standard white, number 5 envelope or whatever.
Number 10.
10.
Number 10. An envelope. Then it said specifically that she left 1 square inch. Like it was very specific on the 1 square inch.
They clearly measured. The narrator clearly measured.
In customary U.S. standard measurement and not UK metric. So there's that. Okay. If you take 1 inch out of a 4 by 9, because I'm rounding down, 4 by 9 would give you 36 square inches, and you take out 1, that's 35 square inches of space that you could fill. And I would say stamps usually are a 1 by 1 square or smaller, right? They're about 1 inch by 1 inch.
Sure, or smaller.
Roughly.
Yeah.
So I'm saying 35.
I feel like you could double that.
You think?
Front and back.
If you layered, well, I don't think there was any on the back. If you noticed in the illustration. I noticed
in the illustration. I'm not saying you have problems with the illustrations being canon for the left-handed issues. I'm saying the illustration is not necessarily canon here.
Well,
because
and the other thing is,
it says in there it was just covered. I think it says back to front. Maybe it doesn't. But
are you going to look it up? I feel like you need to if this is your argument.
I'm going to try to look it up real quick. Yeah.
Just says on the front.
Except for it says it was covered in stamps except for a square inch on the front. That's where, to me, it feels like it implies front and back. Is that reasonable?
See, I think it implies that the front was covered except for the square inch.
No, every bit of it was covered in stamps except for a square inch on the front.
Which would then give you 35 plus 36?
Yes.
That's 71?
That's where I would be with it, using the rationale that you used to get the 35 number, which I think is reasonable.
So I'm still going with 35. You're going to go with 70.
Yeah.
Great. Next.
Right. Well reasoned. Question 4. What could pig mean? Is that the name? Right? That seems to be the name of this tiny owl.
I think so. It was capitalized. So one would think proper noun, not plural.
I like how Harry was like, he's never seen anything that looks less like a pig. What? Where's his name coming from?
Maybe it's named after the book Mrs. Pigglewiggle, which is one of my all-time favorite kids' books.
Okay. Maybe that's what it's named after. I have no
there's
idea.
There's nothing about little furry owl tennis ball things in there, so maybe not.
An owl named Pig. I don't know. Question 5. Was there any way Vernon could have prevented Harry from going to the World Cup?
Without severe repercussions on himself, you mean?
Exactly. Yeah. Like, is there any way he would have let himself make that choice to prevent Harry from going, if that tracks?
Would Harry still have thrown the threat of Sirius at him? Like, did that part still happen?
Right. I'm saying, yeah, from even with that, I'm saying he, at that point, says no. Like, is that possible, is what I'm saying. Like,
Well, here's the thing. I say no to my kids a lot. So I feel like there are times that there are things you can say, but usually mine are, we're too busy, or we have this scheduled, or our trip is such and such and such a date. But the Dursleys don't let Harry do any of those things. So they can't use that. He doesn't have a scheduling conflict. It's not like, oh, we're going on vacation and you're coming with us. Now it's like, you're leaving and I can go on vacation.
Right.
Or something. So I really wish I could figure out a way that it would work just to have a fun answer to your question. But no, I think Harry checkmated him pretty well there.
Mm-hmm. I think so as well. For Vernon's character, I don't think there was a way that Harry wasn't going to be going and getting what he wanted here. Vernon put up a good fight. Yeah. But it was a no-win for him.
No, that's okay. I'm a fan of no winning. Hey, Luke.
Hey, yeah?
Let's keep this show rolling, shall we? You're really being slow over there.
Am I?
My show? I say yes.
Okay, fair enough.
So let's get into, what was your favorite line?
My favorite line, it's a section, but it goes exactly along with that last question that we just had in our burning question segment. So I'll just read it out. A slight spasm crossed Uncle Vernon's large purple face. The mustache bristled. Harry thought he knew what was going on behind the mustache. A furious battle as two of Uncle Vernon's most fundamental instincts came into conflict. Allowing Harry to go would make Harry happy, something Uncle Vernon had struggled against for 13 years. On the other hand, allowing Harry to disappear to the Weasleys for the rest of the summer would get rid of him 2 weeks earlier than anyone could have hoped, and Uncle Vernon hated having Harry in the house. Checkmated. Like, there's no way that Vernon's going against that opportunity, plus the extra, ace up the sleeve that Harry's got with the Godfather card.
Which they know he's this convicted murderer, but not that he's innocent. I really feel like the theme of this chapter is the consequences of parenting.
Yeah, very much.
Because it's all about, how do you choose something that's best for the kid you're in charge of that doesn't impact you negatively if you can help it? Mm-hmm. Or what are the consequences of choosing your life that way?
I'd imagine from the time we're recording this to the time it releases, Accio Politics may have caught up to us at that point, or getting close.
I feel like we need to suggest this to them.
My point being, this is my guess right now. We're recording this a couple weeks ahead of time. My guess is they're going to do the politics of consequences. That's just a guess. Truly, I don't know. No insider information here. But from the discussions that we've had, that's what I would pick. So that's my guess. Let's start guessing every chapter what we guess their politics going to be.
It's that or the politics of weight and size in the world. It's one of the two.
Yeah.
Like
self-abuse. That angle of it.
Yeah. Well, or something, or even just like how you manage the world as, like eating disorders kinds of things, like the way it makes, So yeah, this is a really good chapter for them.
Yeah,
not that it's not a good chapter for us.
Check out their podcast, Accio Politics. They're everywhere. Very good stuff. Melissa, what was your favorite line?
Harry frowned. He thought it was a bit rich of Uncle Vernon to call anyone dumpy when his own son Dudley had finally achieved what he'd been threatening to do since the age of 3 and become wider than he was tall.
Yeah, that's
another good burn.
Yeah, just such excess, and I do feel bad for Dudley for some of this stuff, because he didn't choose this.
Okay, but it's written really funny.
It's really funny.
I feel like I should put a disclaimer on this whole episode that I don't have my sensitivity ears on today.
Yeah. I've tried a little bit for us. So.
Yeah, I appreciate it, because this chapter, it's just so funny. It's really hard for me to do that.
JK really lays it on thick. I mean, she does. So that's not our
Right.
fault for enjoying the jokes.
It is not. All right. Who is your chapter MVP?
My chapter MVP, who we didn't even mention, is Errol, because Errol was so overloaded with snacks and cakes and meat pies from Mrs. Weasley, and frail and fragile and old. He had to recover for 5 days at Harry's place before he could make the flight back. Like that. I feel like that's just worth a shout out, right?
Good job, Errol.
So that's what I think.
Nice. I, for my runner-up, went with Ron.
Okay.
Simply because I really liked the letter of, we're going to come get you if they say yes. And we're going to come get you if they say no. Mm-hmm. We're just coming to get you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like that idea. And his parents are the ones telling him, like, yeah, Harry's just coming. So, like, mini shout out to the parents.
Yeah. And really, Harry was really good this chapter.
Yeah.
This was a good Harry chapter. So
it was a good Harry chapter without it being like major climax and he's doing all kinds of stuff.
Right. That's why I wanted to add that in, because it's not super action hero Harry Potter extreme.
Dun, dun, dun,
right?
dun, dun, dun,
wearing
dun.
a cape.
I love it when a plan comes together. Very A-team of him.
Right.
And we're out.
We're out.
And you can find us in places like Twitter at Not Named Podcast. We are on iTunes and Stitcher and Spotify and all those other fine places that you can hear us speak at you, including YouTube, where we would love for you to listen there and leave a comment. You can email us at the podcast that@gmail.com. My favorite thing right now is our website. You should go there and look up stuff, specifically the fact that you can help us out by clicking our support us link and clicking on Audible and getting yourself a free audiobook for a month. You can click our Patreon account and join our Patreon, which gives us the opportunity to continue producing all of these wonderful shows for you. We also have lots of Patreon exclusive content for people who subscribe and pay, I think it's the $3 a month and higher. You get all kinds of things. So please sign up. We appreciate every single one of you who do that for us.
And that is at patreon.com/stayimaginary. It encaptures all of our shows here at the podcastthat.com family. So you don't look for Must Not Be Named, look for the podcastthat.com, or just go to our website. But subscribe, rate, leave comments on iTunes as well. That really is the number one place that we get traffic on these shows, and your comments go a long way. I challenge every one of you listening to leave a comment.
It can be anything.
Yeah, you can tell us nice job or keep trying
or almost there.
You'll get them next time, maybe. That's.
And with that, we'll see you next time when we discuss chapter number 4.
Back to the burrow. Stay imaginary.
Thanks.